Hi, everyone. This is the Wellbeing Designers podcast. My name is Réka Deák. I am your host. In the first season of the podcast, we will meet the first generation of well-being leaders. They are the ones who are called head of well-being or similar in big organizations. Their responsibility is to navigate through the growing amount of well-being offerings to create value for employees while also keeping the executive leadership team engaged about the topic of well-being. They are proving that investing into well-being pays off and creates sustainable performance and business success. They are well-being designers. Hi, everyone. This is episode 7 of the Wellbeing Designers podcast. We welcome two guests on today's show, Julia Cornu and Lisette de Jonge, the two global health and well-being leaders at Ingka Group. You might know it as IKEA. Ingka Group consists of three business areas: IKEA Retail, Ingka Centers, and Ingka Investment. IKEA Retail includes 482 IKEA stores, including city stores across 31 countries. Each year, they welcome more than 600 million visitors to these stores, and they have more than 3.8 billion visits to IKEA.com. IKEA has 177,000 employees worldwide. Lisette de Jonge is originally from the Netherlands, living in Copenhagen, working in Malmö, Sweden. In 2018, she started in her role as Global Health and Wellbeing Leader within Ingka Group, with a main focus to develop and implement the global health and well-being strategy in all markets to create a consistent coworker experience. As a business psychologist, her fascination for job satisfaction and employee performance began early, while her specific interest in corporate well-being developed during her career, where she realized a business impact by focusing on measurable and long-term health prevention strategies instead of reactive and gut-based well-being interventions. Personally, she is passionate about and interested in people. Health and culture elements are both hobbies and passions. She likes to read about psychology, business, economics, and health. Julia Cornu is co-leading the Global Health and Wellbeing Center of Expertise that is supporting IKEA's more than 170,000 coworkers in 38 countries. For the last year, she has worked with developing, implementing, and measuring IKEA's global health and well-being strategy. With a background in organizational development and change leadership and business development, one of her interests and areas of focus is to ensure that health and well-being is a natural and prioritized part within all functions and strategies within Ingka and IKEA. Julia is also the co-founder of Understand Foundation, which takes a holistic approach to raise funds for research in the field of mental health and conducts advocacy work and raises the urgency of focus on mental health in everyday business and boardrooms. Good morning, Lisette and Julia. Welcome today on the Wellbeing Designers podcast. I am very, very happy to have both of you here today. And this is a special edition. We never had two interviewees on the show. So thanks for accepting this challenge today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having us, Réka. We really look forward to talking to you.
You very often, as I saw, step up as the two of you also on social media. So I think it's very impressive how you share the work and the responsibility. At first, Could you tell us how you got into this world of organizational well-being?
So from my perspective, I've been always working in the topic of health and well-being in my career as an organizational psychologist. My interest is a lot on organizational aspects connected to the employee performance. So in the past, I've been working a lot with absenteeism within organizations and to create organizational strategies around absenteeism and the prevention around it. And later on, the focus became more on well-being and health, to see how we can, as an organization, focus on the preventive aspects to see how co-workers can stay healthy, and how also the effect towards the organization stay positive. From a career within the consultancy, I now work for a couple of years within the retail organization.
Thank you, Lisette. And what about you, Julia? What made you choose this path in your career?
Yes, it's a good question. And I don't think it was specifically deliberately. I ended up here. I had education within management, but have always had a really strong interest in health, both from my own perspective, but also from the societal perspective. It evolved actually by also being so interested in leadership and how actually my leaders and my manager affected my own personal health and well-being and my first career, my first jobs, and started to reflect of how important it is to actually work with that perspective. And that was the starting point for me to go into the organizational perspective. And mental health and health in general have always been a very big interest in and driver for me as well.
You are also a co-founder of a foundation, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's a foundation operating here in Sweden where I'm based. Me and some colleagues, it was 7-8 years ago, we were talking about how can we influence the arenas where we operate in organizations, in boardrooms, on a high level, advocate for mental health. And then it was not that visible as it is today. So we founded this foundation to really start to advocate for the importance of working with mental health in organizations and societies.
That's a beautiful mission. And were you already back then working in your profession closely with well-being and mental health, or was it kind of like a first step for you to get into?
It's a little bit hard to actually answer that question. I was working at that time a lot with leadership and also organizational development. So I had no well-being title in that sense, but the core of my work was to design leadership processes and culture at companies to make it possible to stay healthy when you work for that organization. So it all fits together in some sense, but the title was not well-being at all.
Yes, nice. So getting back then to your current roles at IKEA and at Ingka Group, could you share a bit about the history of well-being at the company? Because for me, IKEA is a company which has been always very progressive, especially in terms of sustainability, and health and well-being go hand in hand together.
Yes, absolutely. To start off with is that Ingka or IKEA is an organization where the focus on supporting co-workers and to create a better every life for the many people is always been central. So when we talk about the development of the health and well-being role within the organization, it was already a very smooth, aligned approach towards the bigger vision of IKEA. So when we talk about how health and well-being has been developed within the organization, is that in 2018, the role was developed as a new role within IKEA. And at that moment, there were already some initiatives going on in the different markets where we are operating. But when I joined IKEA in 2018, my main mission was to transform the IKEA health and well-being initiatives into a kind of a holistic and inclusive well-being strategy. So the scattered approach that was going on in the different markets needs to be aligned and holistic, and the experience from a co-worker perspective should be aligned all over the markets. And then, of course, by creating this holistic strategy and implement it in the different markets, we want to create a healthy and a positive work culture and improve our many co-workers' health and well-being. And in 2018, we kicked it off to say we really want to create a better everyday life for the many people. And health and well-being is a core enabler to do that, and a prerequisite to thrive and perform at work. We, of course, knew already within IKEA that when we are supported and empowered in an environment where we feel valued and safe, we really can reach our full potential. But we really wanted to make this into a strategy and a holistic approach.
And could you share maybe one or two examples where well-being in terms of regions or countries was really strong, where you could learn and elevate that onto a strategic, holistic level?
Yeah, actually, in many markets, the health and well-being initiatives were already quite advanced. For example, in Scandinavia, some of our markets were front runners, but also Austria was a front runner when it came to mental health. And for example, our mental health ambassadors were already working in Austria. Finland was already strong. And of course, there were some other really good initiatives going on in different markets, but there was not a holistic strategy formed around it.
How did COVID interrupt this flow, or maybe even accelerate it or supported it? That's what we see sometimes in many companies, that this topic got really on the top of the agenda after COVID.
Yes, COVID within Ingka accelerated the importance around health and well-being more. So we, of course, started already with the health and well-being journey in 2018, clearly defining what health and well-being means within Ingka and ensuring that the approach is holistic and data-driven. But the COVID pandemic actually accelerated the importance around it. And of course, we saw the high need for co-workers to be supported more. For example, when we talk about remote working, social isolation, the increased stress levels, financial insecurity. So everything that we were already working on became more and more visible and more important all over the world.
You mentioned the holistic well-being strategy. Could you share a bit more? What are the pillars of it, or the principles that now you use all around the world?
With the purpose to provide the strategic approach needed to deliver our ambitions, we have now finalized and launched in all the markets the anchored health and well-being framework, which in our case is based on 3 pillars. On mental, physical, and financial well-being, which is also connected to the World Health Organization aspects. So we are following the World Health Organization. And for all of them, we work on prevention education, access to treatment, and continuous improvement. And we have also ensured that our approach remains holistic and data-driven by keeping the global and local approach and really co-create a lot among them. So we have still the global focus with the strategic framework and the way of working. And then we have the country focus, where the alignment of the framework takes place and where local requirements are needed. So also local initiative can be built within the global framework.
As Lisette shared, it has been developing over the years with already super good initiatives, but with the aim to really create a coherent co-worker experience. And of course, also to accelerate the learnings from the different markets. The health and well-being leaders in all of our countries, they do a fantastic job and really anchoring this global frame to their prerequisites and both the legal aspects, but also their analysis of working culture or societal challenges, etc. So they are doing a fantastic job translating it to their reality.
That's super interesting that you mentioned the health and well-being leads in separate countries. What I hear sometimes from people who listen to the podcast, they might have way smaller organization than yours, but they are really struggling or curious about how you can create a well-being strategy and implement it at scale in such a big organization. So could you go a bit into the structure? You are the two of you in the center, headquarter, and then so what is your role exactly, and how is it then connected to the different well-being leads in the countries?
Yes, so then me and Lisette work in the Center of Expertise with health and well-being global strategy. And our role is to really try together with all of our colleagues working with, for example, leadership or business risk and compliance, everything else that is making this people and culture movement happen, to really anchor the health and well-being into those processes, to the strategies, and also into the business, of course, connecting everything together and really try to anchor the health and well-being aspect of everything that we do. But of course, then we have fantastic health and well-being leaders in all of our countries. And they have the same role in that sense in the country organization. They are the advocates for health and well-being in the country organization, and really take the lead on prioritizing initiatives, analyzing the needs, and really to engage and advocate for the health and well-being strategy and the actions and support to roll out in the country. So they are the key enablers in the country organization.
Do they sit usually within the HR function of the countries?
Yes, they do, as we under the umbrella of coworker experience. So they sit closely together with other key functions in the HR operation.
What about you and Lisette? We see very different examples. Some have it under a chief culture officer, or some companies under the chief diversity and inclusion officer. So how is it in your case?
It is the same. We have the mirror, the blueprint in that sense, in most aspects, not equally the same everywhere, because of course we have legal restrictions or directions in some countries. But from me and Lisette's point of view, we also work sitting in the people and culture and the coworker experience and the coworker relations perspectives and organization.
Could you mention one of your favorite well-being initiatives that was really successful and close to your heart?
Yeah, I think when we talk about initiatives, for us, it was also a little bit of a journey to see where the needs of the coworkers were, also during the different times we are going through, from the pandemic to the situation between Ukraine and Russia, now with the cost of living crisis. So we as health and well-being leaders, we are really driving the strategy and the innovation around well-being. And it is really our job to empower all our co-workers to be the best versions of themselves. So when we talk about the right initiatives, it actually sometimes means that we are creating education programs and resources to help our people to learn the skills. So for example, we have been rolling out a customized mental health training for our co-workers, which has been translated in all our languages. And we saw that the take-up rate and appreciation and utilization rate was very high around this mental health training. But it can also mean that when we talk about a good example or see what our co-workers think, it can also become more the tailored examples when we talk about facing challenges, about the stigma around mental health, about innovate ideas and initiatives focusing on customized support or individualized support. So we're really looking at the needs of the co-workers and the input that we receive from them in order to make the best decisions and initiatives roll out.
So you mentioned this mental health intervention that was really successful and needed these days amongst the employees.
And that was one of the initiatives from our end, the global perspective, rolling out this mental health training, as Lisette mentioned. a lot of others support or trainings connected to resilience, connected to leadership, to self-care. But of course, there are so many great examples also in the countries where we have really learned about the local initiatives really connected to both mental, physical, and financial well-being, as that is our 3 pillars. So there have been numerous of fantastic initiatives throughout the market supporting in all 3 areas. And mental health is, of course, one. They're thinking of the cost of living crisis. There have been financial education. There have been a lot of focus on creating a social atmosphere, connecting to each other in challenging times, looking at the social and the emotional well-being as well, to come together to talk about what can be challenging and how can we support each other.
Yeah, loneliness pandemic, that's what we are having as well,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So you connect it mainly then together with the mental health, as I understand.
Yes, that is under that umbrella from in our structure.
Your background is also in leadership programs and development. How do you differentiate actions that you take for leaders in terms of well-being or to every employee in the company?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as we are such a large scale organization, we have a fantastic leadership and change team, really focusing on leaders as a target group, leaders and managers. We are in close cooperation and alignment, and they are designing and fantastic leadership programs with the aim to also include the well-being and health aspect. So in close dialogue and a really great cooperation, we look into that perspective as well. And they have the role as role models, and they have the role to really both talk about well-being and also back it with actions, as they have a huge impact on the co-workers. On the other hand, leaders and managers are also co-workers. So we need also to look at them as every individual we have in our workforce, what they need as individuals as well. So of course, there is a difference based on the skills needed and the role. But of course, we also look at everyone as an individual with individual needs.
You already mentioned this is a strong collaboration between the change and leadership team. So who else is your really strong partner in the company? What makes a well-being leader successful, that they don't just do a well-being program isolated, because that's then also extra time and effort for the people, but it's really, interconnected with other parts of the organization.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that health and well-being needs to be integrated into all key people processes, and ultimately also aim to be in all key business processes. So we need to find good collaboration with, of course, so many other colleagues and functions, and we need to integrate our agendas. But there are more alignment together with, as mentioned, the leadership team, and ED&I is also really important, and a strong collaboration. As we know that the processes we design, for example, when it comes to co-worker flexibility and multi-skilling and contract hours or scheduling, we need to be in close cooperation with the people planning processes and the experts of that perspective. And so there are so many different areas where we can cooperate and should, and to really design the structure to be as healthy as possible.
Yeah, and also to add on what Julia is mentioning, I think when we talk about developing the holistic strategy of health and well-being within Ingka, is that we have always said we really want to move away from the gut-based perspective to a data-driven approach. So when we talk about important stakeholders, of course, it's also our data analytics team. where we have really collaborating on developing, for example, a global absenteeism rate or absenteeism measurement, and that we are really looking into measuring the return on investment on everything we do. We need to track the utilization rate on the programs. We need to see how our coworkers are feeling supported in their health and well-being, if they are engaged. Of course, we also look at other measurements like retention aspects, sickness. So for us also, the data part is very important. And also when we talk about health and well-being as a topic as such, of course, it's very close connected to occupational health and safety. So also our colleagues from business risk and compliance are one of our strongest stakeholders to ensure that we are providing a view to our coworkers that it is actually one aspect that we are focusing on, both from a health and well-being perspective, but also an occupational health and safety perspective. So there are many, as Julia is mentioning, many people very important for us to collaborate strongly with.
What is your biggest challenge when you have to, for instance, present the return on investment towards the leadership team? Are you challenged a lot on this, or how is it so? Or are they open, to look at it more in a long-term investment?
Of course, there is a big interest on the measurement aspect, and we have been working hard on if we develop an initiative that we focus also on the data part, as I just mentioned. But everyone is also realizing that health and well-being is a long-term topic. We cannot change the engagement, for example, within a month within organization when we have been rolling out a certain initiative. So, of course, there is a big focus on improving and supporting the health and well-being of our many co-workers, but of course also with a humanistic mind. So data is important, return on investment is important, but the overall health and well-being of our co-workers is even more important.
I would also add that, of course, we as an organization also say that we really strive to have a positive impact on the society. So if we are talking about health and well-being, and of course our main focus here from people and culture or HR is our co-workers. But as we know that if you as an individual and a co-worker don't feel well at work, you influence your family members or your friends, and ultimately, of course, have a huge impact on the society where we operate. So, of course, it has a bigger effect than, if I may say, just the co-worker perspective. We of course look at how can we influence in a positive and a healthy way our customers and also the society to really try to influence on a positive level also for this holistic system that we operate in.
You have a lot of customer-facing employees in the business, so if they feel well, if they then treat other people well, the coworkers and the customers as well, so how consciously you are also tapping into that to influence the well-being of your customers?
We have a long way to still go on this perspective. We identify it, of course, as a really, really important area to develop. We know how important it is for our customers to see healthy colleagues at IKEA when they meet us, when they come and, for example, visit our stores. And we have a fantastic range that we utilize in many ways. If you have been an IKEA unit or on a store, and you can see that, of course, we try to communicate the importance of sleep in close connection with the bed, with the range connected to bed, and to create a calm and a supportive place at home. So, but I think that this area we can develop even more.
What would be your ultimate advice for future well-being leaders? And how do you see well-being in organizations in the coming years?
From my perspective, it would be to really listen carefully to what your employees are telling you. Of course, well-being is a subjective perspective sometimes from an outsider perspective. So it's very important that people are really listening well and asking questions. What is the need? And of course, it's important to think also, do we need to do something specifically based on this need? For example, when there is a need of a chair massage, for example, is this the right initiative to really roll out, or is there something underneath going on why people are feeling stressed, or where people are having more ergonomic complaints? So I think it's very important to start off with a good listening. Then besides analyzing the needs, I think it's very important to look at the overall organizational strategy to see how the needs of the coworkers are aligned with the vision of the organization, and then see where you can make a match.
Yes, and I think that just to tap into what Lisette said from the organizational point of view, I think that businesses should treat well-being as a tangible skill, and that is learnable actions and daily behaviors. I think that we are just in the starting of that movement. We have identified, of course, that it's good for both people and for business if we support and be preventable in the health and well-being. But from my end, I would see the next step is really to anchor it also to this tangible skill, and should treat well-being as one of those critical developments to really enhance continuation of a healthy workplace, both for the individual and the organization, but also looking into the perspective that we are still human beings that have the same needs, I think, as we had a couple of years ago, and we'll still have the need to connect, the need to have secure and stable relationships, to have time to talk to each other, and for leaders to have time to actually lead. So to really keep those basic human aspects, I think that is still will be equally important in the future as it is today, of course.
I love how you captured both sides from Lisette, the listening, so how well-being leaders have to then listen, and then you, Julia, captured how people can develop even themselves to acquire these future skills, or of course the company can support them, because these skills are learnable, so you can learn them. What is your personal way to be well? How do you keep up with this intense work that you do so that you keep your own well-being?
Yeah, that's a good question. You always theoretically know, of course, what you should do
Yes.
to stay healthy. We all know that. I have worked a lot with trying to understand my own needs, to set boundaries, for example. I'm often quite good at motivating myself to go out and have the physical well-being, but the mental part is, of course, super, super important. I really try to actually listen to myself when I need to slow down, when I need to actually accelerate, because I also have energy to do that, and to connect with people, and to really connect with my social network around me. I don't say that I have very specific things, more to really try to listen in and not only force myself to go ahead with plans if that actually does not feel right, both in the larger perspective but also in the small decisions in every day.
I also, of course, recognize it and echo it. And for me, it's also the importance of actually disconnecting. So I really realize, as we have quite an intense job and life is busy, as everyone's life is busy, and I really realize that I need to disconnect on certain times to really get back to myself, get some breath, and really be in the nature without maybe a podcast, without listening to the music. And I feel that, of course, when you are in the nature and in the relaxed modus, that your physical and your mental well-being is actually being recharged. And I really need that in order to stay active, feeling good.
I am with you on that as well. I use that myself. Where do you go usually? Do you stay in Sweden or Denmark?
I usually go for a long walk with my dog along the beach, or we go to the forest. Just try to avoid the many people or the crowd. to stay a little bit in my own little bubble.
Thanks a lot for this very insightful and honest conversation. We all got smarter, and it was just good to get to know you as well as people, and see even during this conversation how much alignment do you have between each other.
Yes, so thank you so much for having us, Rekka. It was really, really interesting to talk to you today.
Absolutely. Also from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wellbeing Designers podcast. We have come a long way since we started this podcast end of 2022. I have some big news for you. We will be participating in 2 conferences in May and June, one in Zurich, Switzerland, and the other one in Budapest, Hungary. In Zurich, we will have a live podcast conversation on the Wellbeing at Work Summit, 25th of May. There will be all the new guests involved into the panel discussion. Our focus will be building and creating a well-being strategy in large organizations. If you are around, come and join us in person on this event. You can find more details on the homepage www.wellbeingatwork.world. In Budapest, we will have a live podcast conversation at the Business Fest, 8th of June. I will be joined by a previous guest from the podcast, Jake Sanders, and we will discuss about international well-being trends, how strategic well-being is high priority to design people-centric work cultures in organizations. Let's design the future of well-being together. To join the movement of the Wellbeing Designers, reach out via LinkedIn or via email hello@rekadeak, rekadeak.com. I am keen to hear about your stories, your ideas, and feedbacks. Our new website will be launched soon. I will let you know when you can check it out. In the meantime, sign up on Spotify, Apple, Google, or Amazon, so you will be notified about the next episode. Together, we can design the future of well-being and make workplaces fit for humans.